Alright, so what I am looking at here is the VVTi cam phaser gear for the intake cam from a Toyota 3SGE beams motor from the Blacktop motor from my 2000 Altezza. Now, there's a normal condition with these when they age that a O-ring inside of them becomes dry and brittle and leaks oil. So I noticed a bit of an oil leak behind the timing cover, and after replacing all of my typical oil seals on the front of the 3SGE, put all back together, still noticed some leaking, discovered some oil leaking from both the intake and exhaust gear. Now, what I've come to learn from some commenters online is that this gear uses the same O-ring as the 1JZ/2JZ, which I'll probably just refer to as the JZ intake gear. Uses the same O-ring as the JZ intake gear, so the JZ kit can be used to repair this type of VVTi gear from the 3SGE as well. I went ahead and purchased a kit, which I'm going to attempt to apply to this gear and confirm that it does fit, because I have not seen any pictures of one of these assembled or disassembled to confirm that it fits. And I also want to note that there are some notable differences between this intake cam phaser and the JZ cam phaser. Now, I don't have any JZ cam phaser with me, but I do want to point out some differences here that I think should be noted by people that by anyone who sees this online. First of all, you'll notice that on the JZ cam gear, there are hex bolts, where there are these 6-point star bolts that are used to assemble the gear. So it's assembled a little bit differently. The second thing is that on the 2JZ and 1JZ gears, the entire casing, this entire casing here, lifts off once the bolts are removed. That is not the case with the 3SGE gear. This casing actually is bolted from underneath the gear. This outer ring here, let me use my tool to show. This outer ring here is actually part of the gear. So the outer casing for the cam phaser actually passes through the gear and is actually fastened through the other side. But what's more interesting is that that's actually not even the case. This casing is actually sandwiched in between the gear, this outside piece, which is the gear, and an inside piece where the bolts pass through. So a little different than the 2JZ gear. You also notice that there's only one hole that really gives you the ability to realign things. And in my situation, I have very carefully with a Sharpie filled that hole. Since the gear is so clean, I can't use dirt as a marker, I filled that hole with some Sharpie to give me an alignment mark. I've also used Sharpie to give me some additional alignment points just to make sure I've got a backup to put this thing back together and align it in the proper setting. And it definitely is aligned like the 2JZ gear. So there is some level of alignment here. Now, from what I've seen online, another difference from the 2JZ gear in this one, the one picture I've seen online is that there's a spring inside here that it seems to push on the actuator inside of the housing here. So I suspect that once these bolts are removed, this thing is going to pop apart. So what I'm going to do is lightly hold it in a press while I disassemble it to keep the spring from popping it apart. My hope is that I can disassemble it, keep all of the gear the cam phasing pieces inside of the housing and just access the O-ring, which I believe to be probably between this end plate and that center housing piece that's sandwiched between them. Hopefully this becomes more obvious when I take it apart. One last thing to note, on the 2JZ phaser, there's a note of these, what do we call these ridges, where the ridge, one ridge is like skipped. So there's a space in the ridge to tell you how to align the phaser with the ridge. There's no such ridge on a 3SGE cam phaser gear. So it makes sense to try to keep it together, because it's going to be much more difficult to realign it if it flies apart from a spring decompressing when I take it apart. So okay, so what I've decided to do to keep the phaser together while disassembling it is just use a couple quick grip, simple cabinetry clamps with a nice little rubber foot on them to not do any damage or score the bearing surface on the back side. Here you can see how I have it sitting in there. Don't really know if an alignment matters at this point, but I've got it so the tab is face up. It is leaking a little bit of oil as I take it apart. The bolts are a T10 Torx, and they came loose very easily. So I suspect that they probably are 10 foot-pounds or similar to the 1JZ gear. So I'm gonna now take these bolts out and see what happens. Okay, so as suspected, with the 5 Torx bolts removed, the cam gear is free, and you can see there it's free, and the housing is sandwiched between this back plate and the cam gear. And that blue there is a mark I was trying to make just to get a second alignment. But you can see it is aligned. There's my Sharpie, and I may go grab a grease pencil to give me some better marks to work with, because Sharpie is not sticking to this steel at all. And this steel, whatever this is made of, is incredibly hard, and I can't even scratch it to make a mark. So I'm going to try to get the gear off by removing each clamp separately and just kind of work my way from there. But there it is. Gear's loose. Alright, so here we are with the gear removed. There's the front of the gear that we are all used to seeing. There's the back side that sandwiches down the phaser housing, I suppose is what you'd call it. Looks good. Let's set that aside. And then I've kept the clamps on the phaser to hold it together. You can see how it's sandwiched together. There's my Sharpie alignment mark. You can tell it's adjustable. I may put some additional marks in there to just give me some other reference points. But a couple different kinds of steel used here, but this is how I'm holding it together. I'm gonna make some more alignment marks just to double check everything, make sure it's good. It's leaking a ton of oil still, even after setting out. These things are just full of oil. So I'm gonna do a couple more line marks and pull it apart very carefully and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's what I did to get an extra bit of alignment security on this thing while it's still clamped together in place. I took a pick and found that I could scratch, or I should say score, the outer shell here very, very, very faintly inside of each of these openings, which you can see are adjustable. So I went around with my pick, just scored a nice little outline of each of these grooves to give me a reference point. Went around and did all 5 bolt holes and also did the alignment hole as well, just so I've got some extra locations to align to. There's no alignment on the gear, from what I can tell. And there's no alignment on the back plate because it threads through. So the only alignment occurs with this housing, which is of some sort of super hard steel that isn't even scratchable. But this back plate is just able to be scored by my Craftsman pick. So I did that for extra reference. Hopefully that gets me close enough that doesn't cause any problems. So now to take it apart. Okay, with a slight tap of a 17mm socket in here, tapping downward, it popped open. And yes, there's a spring in there. It's spring loaded. And you can see here the seal groove. The seal is already split. Looks very dry. So I'm going to carefully take this thing apart and get a better look at it. Let me give you a visual again here. There's the spring. It's pretty tense. Not sure why that doesn't exist in the 1JZ, but there's a big old spring in here. I'm gonna pull it open here and get a better look at the inside to see if there's any kind of alignment of the spring. I don't know if there is, but more to come. Okay, got the top off. Here's the top. There's the spring. It doesn't appear that the spring has any sort of clockwise, counterclockwise alignment. It's just sort of stuck in there. As far as I can tell, there's no little indents or references that tell me that the spring should be a certain way. You can definitely tell that it's different sized. The small size of spring goes down towards the back side of the gear. The big side faces the top. There's the inside. There's what I believe to be my old leaking O-ring, which I'm about to attempt to replace. So next step is to replace that O-ring, see if the 1JZ, 2JZ kit O-ring indeed does fit in there. So that's next. Okay, got the old O-ring cleared off, and I can tell you it was definitely done for. It was super crusty. So here is the O-ring that comes with the 2JZ, 1JZ kit. Just gonna try to one hand fit it in. I just say I need to stretch it a little bit, but I'm gonna say that this will fit with a little stretching, so I think we're in good shape. One thing to note, these kits come with the outer seal ring. That is not the correct ring for the intake cam phaser for a 3SGE. That one is the one that we use on the exhaust for the 3SGE. The intake, as you can see, which is still stuck to my intake bolt, is slightly bigger. You can see it there. It's slightly bigger. So you got to get a new intake washer for the intake phaser, because the one that's included and the one that's using the 2JZ is the part number for the exhaust on these motors. So keep that in mind, that your washer is going to need to be the bigger one. So I'm going to try to stretch this on, get the spring back in. I didn't bother to try to take out the phaser mechanism inside here. It's stuck in there pretty good, but I didn't feel like necessary to take it out and mess with it. There's no markings that show its alignment, so I'd rather not risk screwing this up at this point, which seems to be so far going pretty well. So I left it alone. I'm going to give it a little bit of cleaning with some light oil just to get some of the crud out of there that's fell in there from cleaning off this surface where the old O-ring was. But overall, I'd say it's gone pretty well so far. So next step is to clean, get this O-ring on, and I understand I have a short period of time to get this assembled, so quickly start to bring her back together. So I've got it back together partly. So that spring puts up a fight. So what I did was compress the spring by hand, and since it's a little difficult to get clamps on there while also holding the spring, I finger tightened 3 of the bolts to get the housing back together with the spring tight and get the O-ring nice and secure in there. And also, by not fully tightening these and just having them finger tight, it allowed me to get my alignment really close. So I feel like we're probably within a degree or better of alignment here. So I think I'm looking pretty good. So my next goal will be to take these bolts back off, remove one of these clamps, and that will allow me to sneak the gear back on and bolt it down properly and make sure everything is exactly aligned where it should be. Although I'm pretty happy with it, so it's pretty close. So, all right, moving on. Okay, gear's back on. I've got a couple, it's all clamped together. A couple bolts in there just to check my alignment. It's looking really close. I mean, it's got to be under a degree at this point within the original location. So 2 JZ guys are putting thread locker blue on their bolts. So I'm going to do the same thing. Torque them down to 10 foot-pounds. Take it back apart. See how it looks. Okay, torque bolts are torqued down to 10 foot-pounds each with a little bit of blue Loctite on them. And well, my torque method was to just do a star pattern to gradually tighten them down and then do one final cycle in a star pattern at 10 foot-pounds. That seemed to be a good way to evenly distribute the tightening pattern. Don't know if that's necessary. Looks good, looks aligned. My marks line up. Bottom looks pretty good. There's a new seal in there. I'm gonna bolt it up, and when I get my exhaust gear, I will try in a few days and report back. Wish me luck.